Before we dive into all the details around the SAT and strategies, I want to start by just reminding everyone what we think at Alpha. We believe kids are limitless, and that philosophy absolutely holds true to the way we think about the SAT. It is not something where it's like, hey, this is just who you are and your score defines, what it is and there's not much you can do. We very much have a growth mindset around the SAT, and we believe that, kids can really do well. And it's not just you take it and you hope you do great, and if you don't, you're screwed.
Welcome to the Future of Education podcast, hosted by Mackenzie Price. Mackenzie is the founder of a revolutionary new school model that's disrupting education through AI. Join us as we discuss the latest in education innovation.
Joining me today is my special co-host, Elle. Elle is a longtime veteran Alpha student. Now let's talk about, besides fast math, what kind of app stuff are you using to help you prepare?
So honestly, there's a few YouTube channels that I think English YouTube channels are great, because really you're just trying to memorize and remember, okay, what's in a positive, because you think it's the things you think are common sense. I would say grammar rules are the fast math for English, where it's like you need to remember, okay, this is where the comma goes. And if you have those rules memorized, you're not trying to I hate the advice where it's like, where does it sound like the comma goes? Oh my God, under pressure, you're going to be like, oh my gosh, you're going to be like, you're going to suddenly forget what a comma is. And so I think that's, memorize your grammar rules and then free up the time for the hard reading comprehension. And I think that the best thing, there's a ton of YouTube channels that I followed that had awesome advice. There's one, Strategic Test Prep. She got, I think, a 1590. She's been doing SAT all her life. She got a 1590, but when she was younger and she took it, she had a 650 on English. So she actually was a prime example of how you can actually improve it. I hate the SAT tutors who were born, my sister should not ever sell an SAT course because she was born like this, versus someone who actually did the work and put in the effort. So, and then we also use Acely, which I believe was designed by Stanford students. That could be incorrect, but it's a platform where it basically is just generated SAT questions over and over and over and over again, because there is something to understanding the way the test works. If you go on the test and you're seeing questions you've never seen before, it's overwhelming. You're freaking out, because that was my biggest issue, was that I was thinking about every single thing but the problem in front of me on the test. I was like, oh, what am I, going to do if I get a good score versus bad score? I was way overthinking it. But if it was a question type I could recognize, I'd be like, instead of thinking about all this other stuff, I think back to when I was doing Acely and I was like, oh, I remember how to do this question type. And then another thing we use is Excel. That's kind of, I think, the secret sauce for what we do, because they have all of the very foundational lessons. So for English and for reading comprehension, those things that you just forgot, you can just absolutely drill the rules for those to Smart Score 100 over and over again. And I think that was also what was super helpful. And Excel, it's not a free platform.
It's like $10
It's like $10 a month. So that was an awesome resource that we got to use.
That's amazing. So these are all online resources. Yes. YouTube, Acely, iExcel, all either free or totally, totally reasonable.
And I was always a snob about the SAT type of questions. If they're slightly AI generated wrong, on Acely, I'd report the question. I'd be like, this is not the common, this is, because I'm like, I don't want to learn a different test that's learn to the test. I think that's super important. And so the College Board has a lot of people don't know this, a College Board has a bank of questions that are beyond, they have, I think, 10 practice tests that are available where you can take the time test, but then they also have a question bank that gets updated every few months where they're like, these are the types of questions that are going to be on the test. And I saw that the unit circle kept popping up in the newest added problem sets. And I said, that's going to be on the test. I'm going to go remember what the unit circle is, because that's that, maybe Algebra 2
Where
piece
did you see that? Where did you see that it was going to pop up?
So basically, it's College Board bank of SAT questions.
So if you go and follow College Board and then you see the bank of SAT questions, they're giving you some breadcrumbs about what they're focusing on.
Basically filter by which ones were added recently. And I always did that right. But if it was 2 weeks before I was about to take an exam, I took quite a few SATs because I had a lot of improvement. My final score is great, but I moved up quite a lot. So, and the biggest thing, 2 weeks before the test, I would start just drilling the ones that they had added, but not just, this is the key. If you get a question wrong, don't just read the explanation. Go watch a YouTube video, go find an iExcel, because the question you get on the SAT isn't going to be that exact one. Exactly. It's going to be a slightly... the College Board is kind for giving the bank, but they're not trying to give you the answer. They're trying to tell you the types of things so you're not confused when you go on the test.
Well, and this gets back to really understanding the fundamental concept, not just
So
like,
crucial.
here's how to do this question.
Yes.
And, that was one of the huge, I think, regrets that I have when I look back at my education is I was very much I was not a math science girl. I very much self-identified as that's not what I am. And I remember taking a math course, and I'd studied these questions like crazy. I was willing to work hard.
Right.
So I studied like crazy. I was doing practice questions and all this stuff. And I remember in this one, I was in a college course. And in this college course, there was a whole thing about, it was trains. It was like calculate all the stuff with trains, whatever.
Right.
So I get into the test and I'm like, why are they talking about underwater? What is going on? There's no trains. Where are the trains? And I remember I went to the professor afterwards and complained. I'm like, well, I didn't study water. I studied trains, and this is not. And I, of course, didn't realize it was the same concept, just something different. I was too used to thinking like, oh, I'm going to get a train problem where train A, train B, this, whatever it is. And then suddenly when it was like fish, I was like, I don't know what's going on in the water now.
That is such a great example.
And it was, I'm frustrated with myself that I didn't understand. No. There was an underlying concept that I clearly didn't understand. And I was practicing these questions where I could do any train you gave me, I could figure it out.
Right.
But I literally couldn't translate. And it's kind of a bummer. It's sad.
Yeah.
Actually, I'm really sad about that. Don't you think that's sad? I feel sad about that. I did okay, but I will say it was also my worst grade I've ever gotten. I got like a C+ in that class in college. Yeah, it was pretty brutal.
That's a bummer.
Yeah. I also got a C+ in an engineering course. I got 2 C+.
In the sciences.
One engineering, yes, and one math course. But maybe I need to go back and do some IXL and some Math Academy.
I think that I think it seems obvious when it's other courses besides like the SAT. I think for some, it just went digital, so some people are confused. But like for me, I took AP Chemistry last year, and I remember I was in my first. I guess I was doing the apps, and I remember going to my guide, and I was just like, I don't understand this because I don't know what an ion is. I was in AP Chemistry. I had never taken online. I literally, I think it was. We started the course 4 months before the exam, and 4 months before the exam, I asked, "What is an ion?" And my guide just looked at me and was like, "Oh God," and was like, "Okay, so let's give you the basics." She wasn't like, "Go do more practice questions. You're making careless mistakes." Whatever. She was like, "No, you're going to go
we
learn
need to
what
go
an
back
ion
and
is."
revisit
It seems obvious.
some 8th grade science.
But when you're on the SAT and you get a hard question wrong, they're like, just really read the explanation instead of being like, "Oh no, you don't understand this underlying concept." And so I think it seems obvious in other courses, but for the SAT, it's just as applicable, if not more, because of the time constraint that is on it.
Yes. So, Elle, you gave some great thoughts around, some free resources that you can use for math. As far as the reading section, you said IXL also works well for that. What other resources? All of those are good for both of those.
And yeah, because I think the College Board Bank of Questions is good for identifying what your problems are and getting familiar with the questions. But then also there's nothing better than taking a time test after you've gone back and learned the basics, because that's being able to apply it. Understanding the water versus the train is very crucial. So taking practice time
Okay,
tests
let's
for sure.
talk about the other aspect of the SAT, which I know you have struggled with, which is just the mental game and like the psychology of how you go in and be prepared and ready and just strategies.
Yeah, because it was junior year, we took our placement exams, and I think I got a 1320, which is not a bad score by any means, but I just applied to Stanford yesterday, and their average score is a 1540. And so basically, I was in this boat where I was like, "Holy crap, that's 200 points!" And I look up like how to go from a 1320 to a 1550, and it's like all of the research is like, if you're a freshman, we got you, like whatever. I was like, "Oh my God, it's too late." I was freaking out, and I was like, especially because even if I got a 1600, my parents would be like, Kate too. So, it was kind of like a high pressure situation. And I realized, okay, like I kind of need to grind this. And so that was the mindset, because I went to my guide and I was kind of like distraught. I was probably crying, and I was like, oh my gosh, like my dream of Stanford that I've worked so hard for the last 3 years is going to be killed over this one test. And that really just got into my head. And I was like, oh, I guess I'm just, not an SAT person. And I was reverting back to my like second grade self, where I was like, okay, it's the, academic, whatever, and I'm like maybe not. I was like, instead of the social person, I was like, I'm the activities list person for the colleges. I'm the activities list person. Don't care about my SAT or my standardized test. But my guide kind of sat me down and was like, let's just discuss hours, because I know you're a hard worker. You've demonstrated that time and time again. You love to put in hours. You love the effort. And I think what's freaking you out about this is you think it's an IQ test. Here to tell you it's not. And then kind of sat me down and worked me through the mental math of it, where it's like, it's really just 70 hours. And that might seem like a lot, but really, for an AP test, it's just one more of those things that I'm going to have to study. I'm going to have to grind. And so from, I think it was September to December of that year, basically all I did was SAT prep. I talked to my guide and I was able to, because I was very much stressing about this, I was like, I'll start my APs in January and I'll grind them. But I want from now until December to just do SAT so I can get on level. And from there, I think I went from a 1320 to a 1490. So I was much, 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 much closer. And then from there, it was just kind of like doing more practice. I think my English was really what was struggling at first. And so it was just doing that. And then eventually I got my 790 math, 750 English. So it ended up all right. It's my 1540. But I think that it was a huge mental game for me, because it's like once you typecast yourself as someone who can't do it and you're taking the test, and like for me, I'm a very confident person. So this was always, my dad and I have this like running joke about this, because every time I come home from an SAT, I'd be like, 1600. I got every question
You
right.
definitely did. That is a very interesting thing. You're like, I crushed it.
No,
it's great.
I get the score back. It's like, 1390. Okay, so maybe not. So it was always this mental game for me where because once I did that once or twice, every time I took the SAT, I was like, well, I thought I got this right last time, and clearly I didn't. And so then it just kind of built and built and built. But what I thought was super helpful for me, and like for my last test when I got my 790 with 15 minutes to spare, for me, like what it came down to was like, I need to like trust myself and know this. And it was almost like taking the pressure off, which I it's easier said than done, but it was kind of like, okay, this is my last test. And I thought I would be, AP chemistrying where, before that test I was throwing up, crying, no sleep. But instead I was actually just kind of like, almost resigned, where I was like, okay, this is the last one. I want to give it my all, but the SAT doesn't mean everything. I had my college counselor tell me that like the score I had was fine and like it wasn't going to kill my application. But I think the SAT is just as much of a mental game. It is.
And there
academic.
are a lot of free resources that also give coaching around just everything from like strategy around timing, which questions to focus on, how to go back and check your work when you don't know what to guess, those types of things.
Before my best English score, actually me and my best friend, girl number 2, we decided to watch a bunch of motivational videos the night before instead of studying. And all the motivational videos were like, it doesn't matter what you've studied, what you've done in the past. It matters how you perform today, like right now. Basically, like, it doesn't matter that you've done nothing. It matters how you perform today. And we were just like, yeah, like hyping ourselves up. We were like, it doesn't matter. And like my dad came in and he was like, I thought you were studying. And we were like, we are. This is our studying.
We're getting our mental muscles going in terms of our, emotional balance.
And I always recommend, it scares me so hard. I had a friend who only was like planning to take one SAT, and it's not anything about like perform whatever. It's just the anxiety you feel your first SAT. I always recommend to any parent, teenager, sign up for the next one while you're taking. So if you're taking the October test, be signed up for the November test, because then the October test feels very
it's a practice.
Stressed, this is just a practice. This is just like what I take at school. This is just like what I've practiced on College Board. So that helped me with the mental game. But yeah, I definitely think also strategy is a big thing. I was in line for the SAT and someone behind me said, oh crap, like I forgot a calculator. And then the guy next to him said, there's Desmos on the calculator. And the girl said, what's that? And I was like, oh my gosh. And I literally, it was 15 minutes before the test and I sat down and I was like, okay, so if you do this, this is how Desmos works. This is how you can graph it. This is how you whatever.
You did.
Because I was like, oh my God, she was a friend of mine. And I was like, this is so bad. Because I think that with the digital SAT, Desmos is a huge new tool. And I think it's something you kind of have to master.
What is Desmos?
Desmos is a graphing calculator. But it is not like the TI-84s of the past. It can really do a lot. You can run a lot of regressions. You can do a lot of the very hard math with just Desmos. And this is why I think fast math is so important. Because if you're using Desmos to do 5 times 5,
that's a problem.
That's a huge problem. But if you're using Desmos in the smart way where you're running regressions, you're using it to answer the percent questions, what me and my guide always talked about was no Desmos for the first 15, only Desmos and
After, yeah.
thinking for the last 7 for the math part of the exam, because that gets you in the right mindset where you're like, okay, so for the first 15, it's slope and it's all of those things. You need to master those basics. So if you're getting something in the first 15 wrong, you need to go
back.
Excel.
Yeah.
But if you're getting wrong, this last 7 wrong, it's like, okay, how can we learn the Desmos hack around this? And I think that's what makes it so not an IQ test, is that the last 7, which are like the notorious, like every teen, when you mention like 5 last question of module 2 math, everyone's like, oh, like it's like seen as like, oh gosh, like it's like the fear of every, 15 to 17-year-old. But like this strategy where it's like, you don't even really need to know the math. You just need to know how to work Desmos, which is a tool on the exam.
Which is very interesting. That's something that there's probably a ton of tutorials around how to use Desmos.
Yes. There's 15-minute videos that are like, this is how to use Desmos to answer every question on the SAT. I would not recommend that. I think that if you don't have the core knowledge, it's going to be a train in water thing where it's not the exact video they showed you how to do in the video. You're going to get confused. So if you understand what the question is asking and then are able to use Desmos, I mean, that's what we all did, and it was awesome.
So we talked a lot about the math. You've touched on the reading and the language portion of it. You were talking about how grammar rules is the fast math of that side. Reading comprehension is something that a lot of people just struggle with. What's the secret hack to that?
I think actually the best thing you can do for reading, and this seems obvious, and I feel like every English teacher says this, but to actually read. For me, what I did was the science passages were really what was tripping me up. They were saying words I couldn't even connect, use context clues to connect. And it was just very confusing because I just didn't understand the underlying jargon of like how they were speaking, how this was formatted. I went and I read scientific like research papers basically, which is just, I know no teen is going to want to hear that, but that's what I did. Because then when I was on those passages, I was able to dissect them more. I think using the highlight tool is something that's and taking notes. Like this is the dream test is to go question 27 to 1 on English, 27 to 1, do the test backwards. So when you get on the test, go to question 27, and that's 27 to 15 is grammar. And so if you can crush those 12 in, call it 7 to 10 minutes, which is 100% doable if you have all of you can do it faster than that if you have...
your grammar rules.
You know your grammar rules really well. And then those last 15 questions, there's usually 5 to 6 really, 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 really like, I can't comprehend this like in a advanced way because I can't comprehend this on a basic level.
Yeah.
Questions, and I think that it's giving yourself time for those because it's just you have to highlight, you have to mark it up because it's designed to not make sense.
Yeah.
And then 2, having some familiarity. So I had a friend who really struggled with the poetry, and so she went and read Shakespeare. It's like diagnosing what your issue is, and then going back and not even practicing the types of questions.
But getting more familiar with how it works.
And that's my best advice. I think that honestly, like in the math, you can. I think I could get any student to at least a 750, 760 on math. Like I think it's 100% doable with going back, learning the basics, and then doing the Desmos. But I think for reading, it does take a little bit more time reading comprehension. It's kind of like, do you read, do you write, all of that stuff. But I would say the cheat sheet for that is grammar, and then just getting familiar with the passages. But I did see this one YouTube video that I thought was really, really interesting about this guy who recommended if you were getting, like, he basically had this chart he built that was basically like, if you're getting below a 700, you should actively choose not to answer 4 questions, 4 of the hard reading passages, and guess on them. He was like, your glancing over the passage guess is 100% guaranteed to be wrong because you're falling into one of the traps. Like if you have 30 seconds to answer the question, you're going to fall into one of the College Board traps.
Yeah.
It's like, it's better to literally C 4 questions and then basically spend all of your time. He was like, the test is not hard if you can kind of game it like this. Unfortunately for me, I was trying to get a 7. If you're trying to get a 770, you got to answer all the questions. Yeah. But there are these hacks with reading where it's like maybe actively choose to focus on the ones you can get right and spending more time on those, and then kind of CCCing 3 or 4 of the questions that it's a toss up for. And I think strategies like that for reading can be useful. But yeah, I would say just getting familiar with topics and then crushing the grammar rules.
Amazing. Okay, so I have a grammar question for you.
Oh no.
This is a very important one, and I'm gonna tell you a little story. It's story time. I have a friend. Mm-hmm. She is very, very well accomplished, very smart, very successful, has a very interesting, impressive career. And one of the things that she says that I really don't think she understands. I don't think she has the word I in her vocabulary because she always says me and, me and my husband are going to go to dinner. Me and my daughter did this. And I have thought about it, Elle. I've thought about sending an anonymous letter just saying, please use my husband and I are going to this. My husband and I. And you say me. Most people seem to say me. In fact, to the point that I have stopped correcting people in person about it. And I had this conversation with my daughter, and she basically said, Mom, that's almost an old grammar rule. I understand technically, but it's not a thing anymore.
That's definitely not tested on the SAT.
It's not?
No, definitely not.
Okay, I'm writing to the College Board. Instead of writing an anonymous letter to my friend, maybe I should just write to the College Board and be like, let's get this back in society.
No, what you will see on the College Board is separating, like items in a list that you would separate with a comma. No. Try semicolons. Because if you didn't know, if there's a comma within an item of the list, you use semicolons. They've basically gone, what does no one need to know and what does no one learn in their English class? That's what we're going to teach. And it goes back to what I was saying where it's like, this test could be on anything.
Yeah.
It's supposed to be things you don't know. That's like the whole point of it is to try to trip you up and have to be something that you study outside of your English class. Nobody that just does normal English classes takes a
would learn these
English
things.
test. My sister, because she took the old one, which was a little different. This one, they basically were just like, what is every English rule no one knows? Let's just put that in there. And it's always just like, oh my goodness. It's all of the stuff that you're like, this is not quite necessary, but or like the transition words, that's a big thing where it's like, it could be indeed, it could be, therefore, like, it doesn't, nobody really cares about those when you're speaking. But so I think that the SAT has kind of strayed from maybe the more core me and my friend, all of that versus
whatever it is.
Yes.
Well, I will tell you that Elle and I have had a great time talking all about the SAT. Me and Elle are not going to grab lunch after this, but Elle and I might go see what's happening in the kitchen. So thank you, Elle, for being here. And congratulations on crushing your SAT.
Thank you.
Your 1540, that's pretty amazing. It's absolutely awesome. And I wish you the very best of luck. I hope to have you back in some number of months to talk all about college.
Oh, goodness.
I know. And here's my best advice on that. Just relax and chill. You've done awesome things. You are not defined by where you go to college.
I agree with that.
You absolutely are not. There are so many things. And I think one of the things at Alpha that we help our kids understand is that college is just like a tool that can help you on whatever you're doing. It's not the end all be all. There's a whole other episode that I would love to talk about with regard to the race to college and what we are trying to do to change that at Alpha.
I have so many thoughts on that. That would be great.
All right. We'll have you back then. Thanks.
Awesome.
Thanks for listening to Mackenzie Price and the Future of Education podcast. If you haven't hit that subscribe button, now is the time to do it so you can stay up to date on all our episodes. You can connect with Mackenzie on social media and be part of our daily conversation over on Instagram at futureof_education. For more info about the show and our guests, you can always visit futureofeducationpod.com. Lastly, if you're loving what you're learning, please leave a review wherever you listen to podcasts. We'll be back in your feed soon, but until then, remember, kids are limitless, and it's our job to unlock their potential.